Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. As we get into Luke chapter 20, we get into what is traditionally seen to be Tuesday of the week before or the week of Jesus' crucifixion. And we read about Jesus going in and cleansing the temple and all those things. And this is the next day after that. And the chief priests and the scribes and the elders challenged Jesus, probably based on what he did in the temple the day before, and ask him, by what authority do you do these things? And Jesus answers with another question. He says, the baptism of John, was it from heaven or from men? And it's interesting the way that they answer this or avoid answering it, and the reason why they avoid answering it. It says in verse 5 of Luke 20, they reasoned among themselves, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say, why did you not believe him? Verse 6, but if we say from men, all the people will stone us to death, for they are convinced that John was a prophet. And in these two reasonings, we see two main reasons why people have a hard time accepting truth. And we can all be susceptible to this. There's basically two things that keep us from really being able to be objective and to really look at things and in their true light and to accept the truth in a lot of cases. One is by the fear of admitting that we're wrong. It says, if we say from heaven, he will say, why did you not believe him? In other words, you'd have to admit that you're wrong. If you say that the baptism of John was from heaven, then why didn't you believe him? Why did you not accept him for what he said that he was? And why do you not believe him in connection to what he said about me? Jesus would say. In other words, you'd have to admit that you're wrong. And that's a challenge for a lot of people in accepting truth, whether it's in letting go of something that they believe that was false, or in accepting a new truth that they don't want to accept, but having to admit at the same time that they're wrong, and the fact that they didn't think that was true, or they believed something that was false was true, and they have to admit and say, you know what, I was wrong. I completely missed it on this. And it can be very difficult for a lot of people to admit that they are wrong. And the second thing comes in this reasoning. In verse 6, it says, but if we say from men, all the people will stone us to death, for they are convinced that John was a prophet. That is the fear of other people. What will other people think? What will other people do? And they're afraid that if they say, well, if we say that John's baptism was from man, then the people will stone us, because they're convinced that John was a prophet. And so they're afraid of what the crowds will do. And therefore, they wouldn't come. They also would not fully reason this out and really think this through. And so they stopped short of really taking in what Jesus was saying and answering his question. And sometimes the fear of people often keep us from fully analyzing things, really being objective, and thinking things through. We're afraid perhaps what our parents will think, or what our other relatives will think, or we're concerned about our friends or coworkers or whoever else it might be, maybe society in general. And therefore we just cannot allow ourselves to go there. And so we don't even want to think in that direction, because we know that we will be ostracized, we'll be rejected, we'll be quote unquote stoned by the crowds or whoever else it might be, and we just don't want to go there. And so these are two challenges that we face when it comes to accepting truth. We're either afraid of admitting that we are wrong, or too prideful to admit that we're wrong, or we are afraid of what other people will think. Or it might be both. It could be both, as it was in this case. And so we have to look out for these two things and say, you know what, I just want to know the truth. Even if I have to admit that I'm wrong, even if it means being ostracized and rejected and mistreated by others, I just want to know the truth. And if we would but value the truth more than our own comfort, more than our own pride and ego, if we would just love the truth more than these things, we would be a lot more ready to receive the truth, to know the truth, and to be able to allow the truth to assimilate itself into our lives and to direct our lives in the proper way. So as we read Luke 20 in these verses today, let's be challenged to analyze all of our beliefs and say, you know what, why do I hold this belief? Why do I not hold that belief? Is it really because I genuinely think that I have the truth? Or is it because I don't want to admit that I'm wrong, or that I'm afraid of what other people will think? It'll be a good litmus test to see, if we're pointing in the right direction and if we're really open to truth as God reveals it to us in His Word. So these are some things we can reflect on and think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.